What is up, guys? It is the Sound Alchemist, and today I am sitting here with
Gersh1.
the one is O-N-E, not Juan.
Juan.
And today we're back to answer some questions that you guys have in our For the Greater Wall that we like to call For the Greater Wall. That's how we say it each and every time, whether we're in church, at the Club of Strips, or at Popeyes.
Especially at Popeyes.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they get your order right. You gotta like that. This question comes from Rich, or this is a video series where we answer the questions left by you, the viewer. If you have a question for us, comment down below. Put question from your question because we get to those questions first. This is what Rich Franklin did. He asks, "How do I start my Space Marine lore?" Good question. We talk about the lore a lot, and you create an entire chapter on space or for Space Marines. What's your pointers?
You got to look at it in two different ways. One, is it a 30K army? So if it is going to be focused on 30K, it's kind of has to be forced to be into the 2nd or the 11th Lost Legions. It's a lot easier if you're focusing on 40K lore, because then your Space Marine chapter would be just that, a chapter, not a legion. They could be a successor chapter, they could be a chapter that the Emperor wants to keep hidden or something like that. Or it could be a chapter of like ragtag Marines who have like all been pushed out of their chapter for one reason or another, and now they form their own renegade chapter, but still fights for the Emperor for one reason or another. Tabletop-wise, gameplay-wise, I'd say just go straight vanilla Marines at first, and then kind of tailor your playstyle to what you enjoy the most. So if you like going into close combat, maybe then go ahead and go with like Space Wolves or Blood Angels. If you're more of a defensive type and you like Vultures, Imperial Fists, that kind of thing. It all depends on what you like and what route you want to take your army in.
That's a good point, and I think like the most important thing when you're creating your own Space Marine army or chapter is first. This is gonna sound funny, but pick the color first.
It does.
It's hilarious because like once you have that, you might not have like the lore. You might not know which successor chapter or what your like main Primarch is. But as long as you have a color scheme, you can spray paint all your models and just get them on the battlefield. And like you said, play test it. If you like Imperial Fists, if you like Vultures, if you like Flamers, you like the Salamanders, you tailor your army in that way. But when you're creating your Space Marine army, choose color first, then play style. But yeah, that is once you start actually getting into the lore. I think the most important part is where did my chapter come from?
Right.
That's what you need to ask yourself. Check out our 40 facts on the Primarchs. Each Primarch is its own individual person, and then on top of that, the legion that they led is slightly the same, but there still is like differences between them.
Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, it's always better to make your lore fit with the lore of Warhammer 40K, because if you go to like the hobby shop or you talk to your friends about it, and you're like, yeah, my guys are Space Wolves, they fought with Lehman Russ, it's like, how? Like, there's no successor chapter from the Space Wolves that we know of, except the 13th, which is rumored to be all Wolfen. So, like, to say you just added another one just because, it's a little iffy.
Yeah. Check our 40 facts on Space Marine chapters. We've been doing a couple of them for the past couple of weeks, but we also have a playlist on the channel. And then just listening to the lore of like various chapters, like the Mantis Warriors, the Astral Claws, the Tiger Claws, you start to pick up like, oh, like I can do this with my chapter, I can do that with my chapter. Because first is the Primarch, then you want to decide whether you're going to be a chapter tied to a planet. And by saying that, it's like tied to a sector, a region of space, which is going to kind of tell you who you're going to be going up against. Because if you're far north, you're not going to be fighting against no Tau or Tyranids. But if you are on the eastern fringe, then yes, your biggest threat should be the Tyranids, and your biggest nuisance should be the Tau.
Right.
Orcs are everywhere, so. But keep that in mind, and then by listening to other lore, you start to like add in little bits and pieces and decide whether you truly want to be a planetary or have a home world, or be what is it called? Crusading.
Right.
Chapter, which is also fun because you could mess around with time travel. You can mess around with pretty much anywhere in the galaxy.
Go inside warp tears.
The possibilities are endless, and just let us know what you decide on, and we'll try to create videos for you.
Yeah. One thing though that a lot of people focus on is, let's say you call your Space Marine chapter like the Lion Guard or something like that. You don't have to name every piece of like war gear or ability Lion this. I got the Lion Sword with my Lion Plasma Pistol, and their psychic powers like the Lion Scream. You get, like, it just ends up sounding silly. Mm-hmm. Like the Space Wolves, they have a lot of like Hellfrost stuff, but it's not to that point. Almost, but not to that point.
But we say that because we've gotten fan chapters that's what they do. Mm-hmm. They'll like connect one word to everything.
Especially dragons. Yeah. They're my dragon warriors, and he's like the Dragon King, and yeah. Stay away from dragons.
Next question comes from Galielo D. Do you really think that Faris Menace will come back with the Legion of the Damned, or maybe some other way? No. The only way that I think Faris Menace would come back is if he's like a giant robot. I mean, a dreadnought. Like a really badass dreadnought. That's how I would want him to come back.
He's not coming back. No, he's beheaded.
There is a story though of the essence of him coming back, right?
Like the psychic might of him.
But it was bad. Mm-hmm. Next question.
Starfighter Preror. Can Astartes fight in zero gravity? Well, the only zero gravity I know is a dance club that I think is shut down. So.
Yep, it's a nursing home now.
Damn. So I guess they can't fight. Well, they could fight in zero gravity, but I doubt it's still called zero gravity.
Nope, it's like Jennings Terrace or something like that.
So, unfortunately not.
Next question comes from Kappa Kive. If the Emperor and the Primarchs had Pokemon, what would their aces be?
Hands down Mewtwo, because that is like the best Pokemon. But I mean, I guess it depends, because like you gotta tailor it to each individual Primarch. Like obviously, Vulcan, he's all about like fire and stuff, so they probably have like a Charizard or something like that.
Like a legendary. I do think that they would have legendary everything though.
Okay, so I guess it'd be like Moltres or something.
Yeah. So like the legendary dogs, the legendary birds, the legendary, like all that connected to the different Primarchs.
Even the mythical Pokemon too, because even though they're kind of legendary, they're on their own subtype of mythical.
What are those? Like
Celebi.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't know if they'll be with Primarchs. Because like who would Celebi pair up with? There's no Primarch that's like pro nature, is there?
No, not really.
Yeah. And isn't Celebi all about nature? Something like that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, next question.
This is a pretty interesting one by Tomato of Doom. What was your personal greatest misjudgment about any 40K topic that you first heard about that turned out to be completely different when you got deeper into its lore? For him, it was the Imperial Guard. When he first played Dawn of War, he looked at those tiny soldiers like, what the fuck are those humans going to do with their small weapons in a universe full of demons and aliens? And later he learned that they are the backbone and the defenders of humanity, not the Space Marines.
For me, it was the Skitarii. I used to think that the Skitarii were like a really shitty, what is that called? Steampunk? Yeah. Like version of the 40K universe. And I just thought it was ridiculous for them to bring the Skitarii into 40K, which is supposed to be like science fiction or science fantasy. But then I started reading the lore, and it changed everything. It became more like of a cult. Mm-hmm. The Adeptus Mechanicus is a cult, and it's connected to like the Omnissiah and like all this idea of like the machine spirit, but in reality it's just like really sophisticated AI that they don't understand, so they just give it like animalistic tendencies. So that was the biggest surprise for me.
Yeah, I remember you telling me something about, I think it was the Onager Dune Crawlers, that like there's just a vat of jelly and there's like a guy inside of it like commanding it or something.
Yeah, things like that. Like that are really grimdark and science fantasy-ish and not steampunk at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because when I think steampunk, I think of like the guys with like mustaches and the monocles and like gizmos and gadgets. But yeah, the Adeptus Mechanicus is not that. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
What about you?
I can't really think of anything that like really like got the tables flipped on me. But I guess on your coattails, I agree with the Imperial Guard. I never found them interesting. I never found them appealing. Like you said, they're just regular people. But when you look at the grand scope of the Imperium, there's billions upon billions of them. It's like, yeah, you can say they're getting treated poorly. Commissars and captains, you know, literally just kill a random guy to boost morale and stuff like that. But it just shows you how grim dark this universe really is. To show you that a life of a soldier is worth nothing, that it's all about the collective. And because of that, it's kind of similar as to the greater good. Individually, you matter not in the world of 40K, but together you can make a difference. And that's exactly what the Tau are doing, what humanity's been doing. And even though these two factions are parallel to one another, one's extremely xenophobic, one's trying to include all races into their faction, there's a lot they could learn from one another. And I think if the 40K universe is kind of trying to show you the whole individual versus collective mindset. You see it in Chaos as well. There are 4 Chaos gods. They all fight individually, but if they were to team up together, they'd easily conquer whatever they wanted to. So it goes to show you that together, you're strong, but the faults of one could shatter the all.
Now, did you have anything that was like the reverse, where you thought like, wow, this looks really badass, or like you get a hint of the lore and you feel like it's badass, and then you dig deeper and you're like, oh, they're not as cool as I thought?
Yes, that was the Ethereals.
The Ethereals were this cool?
It's like, oh, like these guys are pretty cool. They look different than the Tau. They're showing them the right way, and it's like the more I read it, it's like corruption, mind control. It's like, oh. No.
It's very vague too.
Yeah, it's vague, but like you gotta read between the lines when they talk about the Ethereals.
Yeah. For me, it was the Grey Knights. But I don't think it was the fault of the actual, like... I think it was the fault of the fact that they progressed the story, and at first they painted the Grey Knights to be these awesome, like, badasses, and if anybody ever saw them, they would have to be killed. So if an Imperial Guard regiment, or even another Spacemarine chapter fought side by side with them, they would have to be killed. But now they're just like, well, everybody's like against chaos, and everybody can fight that way.
Yeah, they've been eclipsed so many times. It's like, why play Grey Knights when you can play Adeptus Custodes? Like,
exactly. And even Adeptus Custodes is going kind of the same route, because at first they were all about like, we only stay on Terra and we defend Terra, but now they're everywhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was pretty interesting. Next question comes from Steve Rogers. He asks, how did you get into 40K and D&D? So the story for 40K was that it was my birthday, and it was 4 of us, and we went to the Games Workshop store inside the mall, the Fox Valley Mall, and bam.
Yeah. He's like, you guys want to play 40K?
Yeah. And then D&D is the most recent one within the last year. We had a player in the group of 40K that started playing D&D with another group, and then he told us about it, and I was really into it, but then these guys weren't, and then he kind of like got us in the mix. He started a campaign, but then he just kind of disappeared. That's what happens when life happens, I guess.
But now we still make our own campaigns and whatnot.
Yeah, and it's fun.
Yeah. I always thought it was like super nerdy and like I'd never get into D&D. Because like I always picture like the hobbits and like magicians and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, that's not my cup of tea. But it's really fun.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it a lot.
Next question comes from Kyle Nowak. Could you give an orc pause by telling him his DACA sucks? An orc pause? No, I think he was just trying to hit you for saying such blasphemy. Next question.
Brian B. The room that you are in right now, How often do you clean it?
Why do you ask? Not very often. Only when I'm trying to sleep. And then last question, do you have one? Or was...
Oh, the Fool 06. This is kind of more for you.
Okay.
Do you have any tips about magnetizing models?
Don't.
I'd say the opposite. Do.
It takes a lot. Actually getting the magnets to face the right way and glue them on the right way is very difficult. So, good luck. No real tips, just a lot of hard work.
Trial and error.
Yeah.
But when you do get it, it's perfect because now you can you have every option available for that model. If you play Tau, I heavily recommend you do it on the battle suits because proxy kind of sucks, but it's nice when you could change things.
Yeah.
But also proxy is really cool because you could experience things. You're not kind of this is what I got glued on my model. This is what it has to be forever.
Yeah. Invest in a Dremel tool. They're not that expensive. I think you can get one for $20 at Menards or Farm and Fleet. And drilling holes, pressing a button, drilling it is way quicker than having the little drill that you have to do manually. So, yeah. But those were the questions for today. If you guys have more questions for us, comment down below. Put a question in front of your question. Don't forget we have Patreon. A simple $1 a month helps us create more videos for you guys. If you can't support us on Patreon, it's okay. When you guys share these videos on Reddit or Facebook, it helps out the channel. So you're supporting us by sharing. You're telling YouTube, hey, I want to see more of these guys.
Hit that like and subscribe.
Gershwin.
Sound Alchemist.
Always used to put my freedom first in any situation.